Great. Welcome to the TAD Summit Innovator interviews. Today, I'm talking with Simon Woodhead, the founder and CEO of Simwood. Simon, welcome.
Hi, Alan.
Right, we're just going to get straight down to the questions. So we have to start, on a high note. So why did you start your career as an Excel monkey in financial services? I don't understand.
That's a tricky one. I'd always been drawn to business. I'd always been drawn to numbers. I was drawn to finance in particular. But then there was this other half of me with technology. And frankly, I was always too arrogant to pursue technology through conventional academic channels. Business always appealed more in that sense. I love my financial career. It was great. It happened quite quickly for me. I was taken on by what's now Deutsche Bank. As a graduate trainee, having skipped the university bit. I managed to end up in a graduate recruitment sort of program and did quite well in the tests, I gather. So come 21, I was managing about 40 million. Which was quite a lot of money back then. I think you can buy a sandwich with that now. But yeah, was continually drawn back to technology. So I ended up in that bank actually kind of troubleshooting the IT department, which was in the basement. And the CEO at the time, who was a former used car salesman, couldn't reconcile why there was these people in the basement that he had to pay more than he paid himself. And the CTO could never give him any answers. So I found myself at 18 or whatever, sitting between the two of them translating, which was interesting, politically educational, you could say.
Oh yeah, exactly.
But yeah, carried on that until kind of the late 90s really, and then it became clear that either I could do the same for more money, or I could pursue my passion.
Gotcha.
So I did.
Nope, makes a lot of sense. You only get one chance, so make the most of it. So eSMS, you were years ahead of the time. You were ahead of BlackBerry, and also, you just focused on delivering a very simple service. I mean, there was all the hype around WAP, but let's face it, it was crap. Now with eSMS, who were your customers? And as you went through that whole experience, what did you learn there that you took forward into Simwood?
Couple of key lessons, really. I mean, in terms of taking forward into Simwood, we need to recognise, of course, it was the same company. So the eSMS as a project started in 96. The company started in 97. Although Simwood, as you see it today, probably started around 2005 in terms of product set. So it started as, frankly, a evening and weekend project when a particularly crazy period in my financial career calmed down. So I was headhunted to as part of a team to rescue a fairly major office in a fairly major brokers, and it was on the basis that save the business, you got a job, don't you haven't. And so we had 6 months literally running around the office, grabbing files out of the room. That's how long ago it was. Things were on paper. And then that calmed down, and the internet was. So this is late 95, 96. That the internet is just becoming a thing. We'd had bulletin boards and whatnot before that, and I'd had a mobile phone for 5, 7 something years at that stage. But with SMS as pretty much the only useful thing that was on it, apart from voice calls. So it was a vehicle for me to. I've always found that my best innovation comes when I want to learn something. So it was a vehicle for me to play about with some new technology, specifically seeing if I could get these mobile phones, or in particular mobile phone networks, to do anything interesting. And the SMS is what came out of it. And if I look back on that time, it's very, very similar to open source. Open source wasn't a thing then, to my knowledge, or at least
Nope,
I wasn't part of it
Nope.
then. We had freeware and shareware and various other things, but they
Yeah.
were very much they were very closed.
Exactly.
What I did with eSMS was, yes, it was closed in the sense that I own the company, I own the code, but the entire business and the entire product was conducted through a mailing list.
Yep.
And somebody threatened to write it up as a case study in a marketing textbook at one point. I don't know if they ever had, but we had this great community with thousands and thousands of people around the world contributing to what they wanted it to do.
Mm-hmm.
It had APIs before APIs were,
Yep.
were a thing.
Yep.
It enabled SMS between mobile networks, which at the time you couldn't do.
Yep.
And of course, it enabled email to SMS, which was supposed to be the main commercial offering. But in reality, commercially, it was an aggregator before there were aggregators.
Oh, gotcha.
So one of the early customers was Citibank,
Yep.
out in Athens, not the US branch, but
yep.
there was an analyst there that wanted to send foreign exchange rates to his customers at the end of every day. Yep. He could have 4 different contracts with 4 different mobile operators, or he could come to us and rely on the fact that they could be delivered. Yep. Be delivered anywhere. And we had many of those.
Interesting.
But yeah, the other key lesson that came out of it, other than my love for open source and what the community can bring to a project, the other thing I got out of it was that you can't compete with your own suppliers.
Yeah.
So the big mobile operators weren't really our suppliers back then, mm-hmm. Because the way it worked, without going into too much detail, meant that we didn't pay for SMS. So we were selling something that was, essentially zero cost.
We won't say the word Simbox or anything like that.
long predates that. This was Nokia 6110s with PCMCIA cards in servers.
Yes.
Banks, banks and banks of those, and we used to dynamically change the message center. Had a kind of LCR that work out where's this from, where's it to, which message center in the world do we need to send this through.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And at the time, the MNOs would generally charge you based on what went through their message center. So if it went through a different one, you didn't pay. So we used to get a bill every month from one mobile operator that I won't mention, and it came in a banker's box. It was like this. And I used to be really nervous every month. It turned out it always added up to 0. So that was that. But then they cottoned on that there was opportunity in this space. Yes. 2 in the UK wanted to buy us. Mm-hmm. I didn't progress that. So they then created their own services that were consumer focused and delivering lottery results, delivering sports results, all the kind of stuff we were doing. Yeah. But giving people email addresses and that was, it's really hard to get your head around in these days. But I couldn't reconcile the fact that I had this mobile device in my hand that was always on. Yet if I wanted to see if anybody had sent me an email, I had to wait for a modem to finish squawking in my ear, and 30 seconds, a minute to actually get online, and then perhaps another 5 minutes to actually download anything anybody had sent me.
Yeah, exactly.
Hoping they hadn't sent me an attachment, because that would be another hour, So eSMS just got over that problem, because we process all of that server side, and we just send a notification as concatenated SMS. You can even reply as SMS, but the actual usage of that was this geeky community rather than necessarily commercial, because you mentioned the B word, research in motion. We're getting going with BlackBerry at the time, and they had this stupid idea of building their own hardware, using GPRS as it was then, technically far more elegant problem to the solution. And we obviously know how that proceeded.
Exactly. I remember it sort of rolling out, each operator signing their deal with BlackBerry, thinking it would go mass market, consumers would adopt this. And of course, they were, it was always in every telco meeting. All the people had their BlackBerries, but they never paid for them. They never paid for the service. They had no idea what it cost to run those, but anyway, enough renting. All water under the bridge. But that's interesting because I'd not appreciated the whole A to P model that you were delivering with eSMS, which of course, I mean, it's well proven, and especially in the financial services community, getting those rates out, getting those alerts out, within seconds has a big impact on how much money people are making, because it is about responding to those changes really quickly.
And the key sort of thing to understand with that at that time is there were 3 mobile networks in the UK at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were a subscriber of, say, Vodafone, and you wanted to send an SMS to somebody that was on Cellnet, you couldn't.
Correct.
They didn't talk to each other, and our service enabled that sending across networks.
Yeah, exactly. I know, it's again just shocking. But again, telcos, standards, everything has to be nailed down, 5 nines, etc., etc. So there's this whole multi-year planning cycle. So,
but we're also, we're 26 years ago, here, and things have moved crazily quick. It's just, looking back from our houses on gigabit connections, using tablets that didn't exist. It seems archaic, but you'll know better than me. It wasn't that long ago.
I know it really is a blink of the eye, but moving and changing tack a little bit, because in your resume of stuff that Simon's done, one of the things you were involved with is Link. So that's the London Internet Exchange. Interested in your view on internet exchanges and their contribution to telecoms, but also how do you see the future of the internet exchanges?
So Links was, I was a director of Links for 4 years, and then as you know, in my last year, I was chairman, recruiting a new chairman and recruiting a new CEO, because John, who'd been there 18 years, was retiring. So it was a really interesting time and a really valuable time for me from a development perspective, and it kind of completed a what's the word, bucket listing, I think, really, because Links was always this. Links was the internet, in the late 90s to somebody like me. It was this mythical thing that I just desperately wanted to be a part of, and an ISP that had the Links logo on their website was like, whoa, that's really good. But in terms of what it contributed, let's go back to those days. Graham Davis, who works with me now, was chairman of Links, a couple of iterations before me, or a couple of people before me. One of the original founders, but he co-founded the first dial-up ISP in the UK, and Links was born out of the fact that those dial-up ISPs in the UK were paying crazy amounts of money for transatlantic connectivity, and if a customer of ISP A in the UK wanted content from ISP B, it would have to go via the States and back, because that's where the legacy tier ones were. So there's this real, what seems logical and seems a no-brainer now, this argument, well, let's just have a switch in the UK and let's just talk to each other and exchange it directly. It's lower cost, it's faster. Everybody benefits, and that's how it was born. It's now the largest member-owned, because that's a key distinction with Links. It's mutual, member-owned internet exchange in the world. Last count was something like 24 terabits per second of capacity. But that's just the public exchange, because Links also facilitates the private connectivity between people, and what you tend to find, unlike other IXPs actually that are purely public, because that gives them a big number to boast about. Links has the public exchange, but then if you have a counterparty that you're doing a large flow with, then you can peel that off to the private, the private exchange. And their contribution has changed. Obviously, there was that massive formative contribution, but going forwards, there's IXPs in pretty much every internet economy in the world. Every city with a multitude of data centers will tend to have an IXP. they serve a really, really valuable role in getting that content to the eyeballs. You know, and those are your two sides of the equation, really, the eyeballs and the content, and they want to exchange packets essentially as quickly and as cost effectively as as possible. And we really saw the benefit of that with the evolution of the internet, but we also saw that with 2012 Olympics and other events like that, where the presence of an IXP was absolutely mission critical. That was the first sort of big televised Olympics in HD. It was a massive event for the internet and technology. Really, I'm sure other people would give you different examples, but for me that was my kind of real coming of age story with the IXPs. And
mobile streaming was just unbelievable.
I mean, going forwards, technology there's a danger that IXPs become less relevant. At the end of the day, they're providing connectivity between two parties. That's really what it's about. And there's many other people getting in on that space. So Equinix now, big data center operator. Cogent, one of the the tier 1 transit providers, sent me a thing that they're doing something similar, where two parties in any parts of the world can exchange traffic directly over their network. Slightly different model to an IXP, because an IXP tends to be geographically constrained, and that gives it its that gives it, well, not only its performance, but it gives its disaster recovery as well. As soon as you have this notion of joining cities together, then you do kind of scary things from a network point of view, or at least you enable some other bonehead to do scary things from a network point of view. But that whole world is changing, because content is, the same city is no longer close enough for the delivery of content. Your favorite word, 5G, and your edge computing, and tick off the bingo items. Content,
mobile edge. I agree with mobile edge. I'm like, guys, really?
what you're finding is that content is getting closer and closer to the end user. So whereas perhaps, say, 5 years ago, Facebook would have had a cache that was connected to an IXP, and all of the access providers could reach that across the IXP. What you'll find now is they'll just stick one in the ISP's network. So that traffic is even closer than IX, and that trend is going to continue. It will keep getting closer and closer.
Exactly, and that's part of like the whole Netflix design, is putting all those basically racks down into ISPs in the major cities. So there's like in London, it's not just the internet exchange, which covers all of the UK, but they're putting them down in different ISPs that dominate their traffic across cities, so you can just serve it without having to dogleg back, which has a big impact in terms of not just the experience, but the reliability as well.
Absolutely.
But cool. So that's really good too, and that's a nice view, because it is. I mean, we've got Amazon has its CDN, Google, Azure, they're all putting in CDN capabilities across their cloud. I mean, Amazon has its edge compute, not mobile edge compute. It is partnering with telcos around that, but and that's basically putting data centers in cities. So if I've got essentially a data center in just outside, say, in New Jersey, just outside New York City, that's pretty much edge. That's as close as you can get to me. It's just a matter of interconnecting to my particular ISP. Anyway, enough rambling on that. Let's get back to Simwood again. Now, one of the challenges I have, and that's my challenge, is explaining what Simwood is. I use like alt telco. You own your own infrastructure around the world, and you provide a whole range of traditional telco services. How do you define your category so people understand the depth and the breadth of the Simwood offer?
I struggle, to be honest. It's easier just not to bother going to dinner parties now, or so it's just IT. Trouble is, then you end up fixing somebody's Windows 95 computer or something.
Exactly.
Enough of my childhood. So how do I describe it? You remember when I talked about eSMS, I said one of the lessons was don't compete with your own suppliers. And that really stuck with me, and that has driven this pursuit of ownership.
Yes.
Not just in a financial sense, but the ability to be responsible for the service that you're providing.
Exactly.
I get really cross when I get emails or even see emails from competitors blaming their service provider or their network partner or their billing vendor.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's them. And,
Yes.
you know, my way of looking at things, I'm responsible anyway. So I want to minimize the opportunity for it going wrong. And I want to do that by controlling as much as possible.
Yeah.
Some might say that makes me a control freak. Others might say that causes us to invest in legacy and the old world. But so what? You know, that enables us to give 100% SLA and have been called on it very, very few times over decades now.
Exactly.
So, however, we're a technology company.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of we're schizophrenic in a sense, because if you look at telecoms alone, you've got your old bells, big heavy iron, very slow to move, established technology, but they underpin these sort of new upstarts that are completely over the top, that are providing what the market wants now, and very nimble in addressing the way things are changing. Simwood has always been both, in that we've wanted to be that nimble, over the top provider. That's where our heart and our passion is. But in order to do that properly, you need to have ownership of underneath. So we started over the top, and then we spent the best part of 5-7 years effectively replacing our own supply chain by building our own interconnects, building our own our own infrastructure. So that where we are now, certainly in the UK, we're viewed as one of those old bells, if you like. One of very, very, not that we're of that scale, but we're one of very few providers that hosts the quantity of numbers we do for other operators, and for example. But we provide that through a very 2020 interface that enables other people to be those over the top startups, but in a way where they don't have to worry about what's going on underneath, because we're taking care of it. In terms of that sort of, I'm not sure if that's the breadth or the vertical, but what we've also found over time is that we were focused very much on the carrier services side, the wholesale, when you could use the word wholesale without it being a dirty word. Others have sort of jumped on that now, as tends to be the case in telecoms. Now we with the acquisition of SIP-Centric last year, we now have a channel stroke partner stroke hosted PBX trunking proposition, and we also have a direct to market proposition. And that's great, because that gives us kind of a rounded focus, or the ability to reflect changes in the market. That, for example, in 2014, when we were purely wholesale, Ofcom took away 90% of our revenue overnight. And gave it to BT, and that's a story I can rant on till the cows come home. But and their justification for it was sound. But they relied on the fact that most operators in the market that were affected by that could rob Peter to pay Paul. We were in a position where we couldn't, because we were very sort of one-dimensional, if you like. So now we're multi-dimensional and look more like a proper grown-up telco. So then you transpose that to the US, where we got our first CLEC in 2017. And we're spending, rather a lot of money at the moment, building out over there. The temptation is to be purely over the top, run it all in cloud, just resell somebody else's stuff. But there's enough other Muppets doing that. If you're going to do it, it needs to be done properly. So we're approaching that in a 2020 kind of way, but reflecting this pursuit of ownership and control. So we're CLEC in I think it's 23 states now. We're live on Stir Shaken now, which I was looking on Friday. There's only like 1% of operators are actually able to do that. We're although we're offering a product that looks substantially like other people's, we're doing it in a way that doesn't pretend we control it. We're doing it in a way where we control it and we're responsible for it, and we can put our name on it and charge people money for it without feeling like a shill.
Well, plus, especially in North America, you can't rely on the underlying telcos, especially when they have problems with certain links or certain circuits. Those problems can go on for weeks. Horror stories, I won't name names, but in Texas, where with a particular sort of carrier, they lost customers in a particular city, and of course, it was a national deal, simply because they were reselling on top of a carrier that just were like, yeah, we deal with it.
Yeah.
And it comes back to it's ownership, because then you can't, there's no pointing the finger. It's your infrastructure which gives you control, and that in the limit enables you to differentiate. So cool. So given a more rounded next generation telco, again, I'm trying to find the label. How do you see the vision for what Simwood will become? Is this taking what you've achieved in the UK and going global?
Yes, no. I would love to, give you a snippet of some grand world domeration strategy that we're, ticking things off on a daily basis. But I'm not clever enough for that. We're in the US because we have a fairly major customer that we were doing a lot with in the UK. We were doing a lot with in Europe, replacing large incumbents in both cases. And they said, hey, mothership is the US, can you come and help us over here? So we did. Of course, they're not alone now. We're adding other customers over there, but that model can work in many other markets around the world.
Yes.
Australia and Asia being sort of relatively high on the on the watch list. The challenge with it is that every market is regulated slightly differently. Yes. Has different requirements, and it's expensive. Yes. It would be very, very easy to spin up a telco in AWS and say, well, hey, we're global, aren't we big and clever? But others have done that.
Yes.
Put a network map on your website that's fundamentally GRE tunnels plus a few lies. But that's not how we, it's not how we do things. So I do have my eye on other markets, but it will be slower than other people might do it, but it will be done, dare I say, properly.
Customer-led, putting smiles on customers' faces.
Yeah, and I mean, coming back to sort of the why and the strategy. I think there is a fundamental change in the market that is causing us as a company to have to get closer to end users, one way or another. I think that as I alluded to before, the days of being purely wholesale and letting somebody else worry about the customer relationship are certainly limited, if not ending. The decline in the price of the minute, the competitive landscape, you have to be adding value to justify charging a premium, and that value in our market tends to mean getting closer to the end user in one form or another. So for us, that's not competing with our customers, but it's enabling our customers to do more with less.
There's
there's a smaller cake to cut up, but we're taking a bigger slice of it than we were before. And that's inevitably going to continue.
Cool. Just moving on. So BT Zero, how's that going?
Really well. And we really saw the benefit of that with the lockdown from COVID-19. Just to kind of recap, because I know you know what it is, but nobody else will. There's this perception in the UK that the PSTN is BT. We're different to the US, where you've got maybe 5 sort of mile bells. We've got 1. And that used to have 100% market share.
Correct.
it now acts like it has, but it hasn't. It's 39% or something now at at retail, and deregulation back in whatever it was, late 80s was a massive boon. There's now 450 odd what Ofcom would call telcos. There's a big debate around that definition, as you've probably seen in some of our recent regulatory responses. There's perhaps 10 or 20 that kind of really are. But anyway, there's a perception that, well, everybody's just reselling BT anyway, so if I plug into BT, I'm big and clever, and that's really not the case. So BT Zero has been driven by the fact that partly that I'm not particularly fond of that particular company and some of their practices, and I don't know why it took me so long to link what I described earlier with the early days of the internet and the foundation of links to telecoms. If you put BT in the place of the tier one in the US,
exactly,
and us in the place of the UK ISP wanting to talk to another UK ISP, why don't we just send traffic directly?
Exactly.
And that's something that in regulation was enabled years ago. It's not anything particularly clever that we've done. All we've done is go around the market exercising what is our right to connect bilaterally with other operators. And we're at a level now where, frankly, we're in the weeds in terms of other people. There's nobody else we've one exception of a mobile operator that we might have to get slightly more assertive with. But we've got everybody that's anybody. And this is where some of the challenges come in, because to add the other 450 is just economically stupid. And that does leave a place for BT. But where it really helped with lockdown was, you use that term in the US as well. You had a similar, So it does translate, but
all around the world we had them, and we having them again, like in Spain.
Don't start me. But so when we had lockdown, there were big international operators that were massively benefiting from everybody working from home all of a sudden, and needed to turn on lots and lots of capacity, and in a similar position to us with regards to BT, where it takes a year to add it if they deign it necessary, even though it's a mutually owned asset. BT Zero, of course, gives us direct, generally IP-based capacity with the others, which means we've been able to scale quicker than we've been able to add BT capacity, but also being able to satisfy particular niche requirements where there's thousands of concurrent calls originating from a particular provider that isn't BT that we happen to have a direct relationship with. Excellent. So in lockdown, when everybody's shut down and engineers are doing the bare minimum out in the field, we were able to keep things moving with it. So that's created us quite a few opportunities where frankly, otherwise we'd have just been, beholden to the economy during lockdown, because we, as a business, we generally follow GDP in the sense that we've got some customers that were going absolute gangbusters, surfing the working from home, trend, and then we've got others that just shut up shop, because they haven't got any customers anymore. And they tended to balance each other out. So we saw traffic volumes dip, although people were talking for twice as long, which was the interesting thing. And
what's your average call time you're seeing at the moment?
Usually about 2.5, 3 minutes, but that varies massively between customers. But what we saw with a common customer base was that it doubled during lockdown. And that partly offset the decline in volume, but come May we called the bottom, in July again we were setting new volume records, and we've continued doing that since. Cool. Which is good, and so far I don't know how it is in the US, but in the UK people are just nobody knows what the rules are. They change every hour. Nobody cares. Everybody's just trying to be sensible and doing their own thing. And so that that sort of cliff edge that we had in March hasn't repeated so far, despite the government's best efforts.
Cool. So no, that's good to know. And it enables you, again, back to ownership, control, to be able to meet those massive growth needs when it's a year-long, 18-month planning cycle with the incumbents, because there's the rules. We have all these departments that need to sign off on it. Cool. Now, one of the many things I learned at SimCom, which was just before the UK went into lockdown,
we were in two minds whether to run it because of the way the news flow was going then, but I think everybody was safe and we had it.
Exactly.
For most people, it was their last business travel, wasn't it?
It was for me. It was basically, I came back and the flight was like almost deserted. It was beautiful. It reminded me back of 9/11 when I was traveling immediately after 9/11, and there was just like me and a few other people on the plane. But enough of that. So what I've learned, because here in the US, number porting, it's just easy. And it is one of the well-regulated pieces that the US does. But just seeing the challenges you are having, and it impacts the end customer, the business's experience of telecoms. So imagine, Boris puts you in charge of making UK telecoms work for everyone, not just. I know you could go for hours here, so just keep it short. What are some of the things that you would do immediately?
Well, specifically with regard to number portability, we need a central database. Not blockchain or any of that other bollocks that they've been playing about with. That was doomed to failure, and guess what? We've been proved right. We just need to procure something off the shelf like the rest of the world uses. It works okay in mobile, works okay in most other areas of the world. It makes me really sad to see the state of the UK with number portability, because we started it way back in the day. The difference is everybody else saw what we were doing wrong and improved on it or evolved. We left it how it was back then, pretty much. And there's lots of history where the regulator has tried to improve things, but the shortened version is they got their numbers wrong as to the cost of industry, and they've been scared to revisit it. You speak to the big residential providers, and they'd say, well, what do you mean it does work? Because they use a common computer system, or they outsource things to India, so they don't really care whether it works or not. But when it comes to business users, and this explosion in the number of providers that can be involved, and indeed the definition of a provider, it's just a nightmare, and it's a nightmare for everybody everybody involved. If the market was consolidated to those, I say 10 or 20 that are actually network operators, then it would be how it was, back 10, 15 years ago, would be a lot easier. But when you've got 450 people claiming they're the telco, and you can have seven of them reselling each other in a line, and some of them play fair, some of them don't, and you can't split ranges, and it's just horrible. So yes, we need a central database, and the necessary processes around that. It works really well in mobile, although Ofcom were seeking to review that the other year. But I think that, sorry, I'm telling lies, they have reviewed it, but they haven't fundamentally broken it. They've just changed who initiates it. And the ability to get reporting codes and that kind of thing. There's no reason in this day and age why numbers are still administered in the blocks that mirror the BT installation from 20 years ago. There should just be individual numbers that can move about. But the sound technical reasons why that's the case, if you go back to a TDM world with 800 exchanges around the country, and this sort of hierarchical spread of spread of number ranges.
Yeah, we've passed
But
that
not
many
today.
years ago. Yeah, and billions have
Yeah.
been spent on IMS. So hey, everything should be perfect, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. No, this is really good. So just moving on, we mentioned SimCon. You can see it in the background there, the little SIM card award. There.
Oh yeah, very. I
I
need a bigger
know.
screen. Well,
Yeah,
you need a light on it.
I know. I need to get the spotlight. Tim, when he was doing his opinion piece,
I saw
had it
that.
like just on his shoulder there. So he'd obviously thought about it better than I had. But I mean, well, first of all, thank you for the SIM card award. Within telecoms, the awards are just backslapping between the big vendors. There's no recognition of the people that actually are trying to make a difference at the grassroots. So that's why great supporter of what you're doing with SimCon. What's your vision for what these awards could become?
It sounds a little grand, but I want them to mean to people in this industry what in science a Nobel Peace Prize would, or in acting a Grammy or whatever would.
Yeah.
I want them to be genuinely desired and heartfelt recognition from their peers, because there isn't that.
Correct.
I have to bite my tongue sometimes. Well, not often, but sometimes. We're going through the award season at the moment in the UK, and there's some deserving winners, and there's some of our customers winning awards, and they really deserve them, and I can't criticize the awards that they've won for obvious reasons. But then there's just some ridiculous things in there, like there was a winner of the best hosted platform, doesn't have a hosted platform. There was one the other year that best network doesn't have a network, it's just reselling somebody else's. And that just completely devalues it for everybody that does deserve does deserve that award. And I sort of, you've heard this before, but the thing I say at SimCon is that the people that are out there doing good don't have time to nominate themselves for an award. And there's something fundamentally wrong with an award coming from your own nomination. If the third party
marketing department, it's like, what are the awards we can
exactly,
and how much money do we have to spend in sponsorship to get that award?
Yeah. And how many do we want in the dinner package? Which customers do we take with us just in case we win?
Exactly.
It's dirty, and I understand that other people see some value in them. It's not just industry awards; it's some of these league tables as well. Make up your turnover to projected turnover to be £1 more than the entry threshold, and you too can be one of the 100 fastest growing companies in the country. It's just nonsense. I prefer reality and heartfelt recognition from my peers. Saddest thing for us is we're never going to enter one of the pay to play awards, and we can't win a SimCon award. So we're destined to never have any recognition off anybody. But as long as we can shine a light on others that deserve it, and you've seen the winners that accompanied you and the winners from previous years, and they all deserve it. So absolutely. I think my wish is that they would all perhaps appreciate it as much as you and Tim and some of the others clearly have, because I think for some that don't necessarily recognize what we're trying to do as much as you do, it's just another award. But
it is different. I think that's part. We have to communicate it, and it's like everything in life, you have to keep saying the thing over and over and over again until a few more people listen and people get it. In terms of back to, I guess, extreme ownership. You are taking extreme ownership, and we're never going to get one of these awards, but we're going to make sure the right people get them.
And I hope, what I would love is to be pestered by other people that want to do different things with it.
Exactly.
That see worthy people that want to take on processing nominations and that kind of thing, because it has been very something we've done so far, and I view it that we're seeding it.
Exactly.
it's called a SimCon award because it's on the back of SimCon. So the incremental cost of doing it, it is
Exactly.
negligible. But I'd love to see it become something on its own, and it probably change name and be nothing to do with us. But the point is, there's a clean, unseedy source of recognition that really means something to people.
Exactly. And it's right time, right place. You just keep it going until the stars align. The key is, I think it's just making people aware of the philosophy behind it, and you just keep repeating that. That's cool. And then just finishing off, because you've talked about this many times, the 15 years in mountain rescue, which is not an insubstantial amount of time. I'm interested, because it is very different to what you're doing in business. What are some of the learnings that you've taken from your time in mountain rescue and applied to Simwood?
It's funny. I think I bore some of the team sometimes because I can relate lots back to to mountain rescue, and particularly command and control and leadership. And not that I think I'm an authority on leadership, but I've worked with some amazing leaders. I've worked directly with leaders and boots on the ground in special forces, all levels of the military, actually, the police, the ambulance, the fire service. So I've seen different ways of doing it, and of course we in mountain rescue formulated our own. Mountain rescue, of course, being a voluntary body comprising people that frankly would never mix in ordinary life, from all tiers of the social spectrum.
Exactly.
But leadership, command and control. I don't know if you saw my talk at Astrocon last year on incident management and that kind of thing. I was reminded of that last week. So I was talking internally about how we needed to change some things. And again, I was coming back to mountain rescue and some of the philosophies there that are really, really easy to forget.
Yes.
And I could bore you for hours about that if you're interested. But in terms of how that's helped Simwood, it's funny. For me, when I first joined, so that was like 2001, I think I first joined. It was I was working sort of round the clock and didn't have time for a social life and all that kind of thing. But it imposed a distraction on me because my pager would go off at any time, and I'd have to stop what I was doing, and I'd have to go and do something good, something all absorbing and kind of helping other people. And I'd come back after that, maybe knackered or whatever, but I'd come back and my head was just super cleansed, if you like, and that made me more productive, more rounded, and I really miss it because there's a combination of factors that caused me to leave, but otherwise I would still be doing it, and I haven't found a vehicle to replace what it gave me yet, both in every respect.
Understood. Well, family does tend to work. Family, you have no time for anything else.
Work, family, politics, geography. There was a few factors.
I know. It's one of those where you just have to, put things out of the, because it can just create this negative spiral with all the stuff that's going on. But anyway, but cool. No, that's, I think, really good to understand. Again, this is just, been a really interesting, diverse interview across so many different aspects. A great respect for what you're doing at Simwood. Also, great respect for what you're doing with the SimCon Awards. Because SimCon, I don't think is happening in 2021. Is that correct?
No, we're not doing it in 2021. But what we've started doing, and after God knows how many weekends of trying to edit it, I could see why I didn't go into video as a career. I put out SimCron. You see what we did there? SimCron 1 I put out last night, and SimCon 2 or SimCron 2 is in the can, as people that know what they're talking about say. So we're trying to leverage what we had at SimCon, which is access to some of the best speakers in the business. And and capture that and deliver it to people, but in a different way, not death by PowerPoint through YouTube. There's no place for that. But show us what you can do, show us how to do it, type content or fireside chats a bit, a bit like this. So we'll see how that goes. Of course, SimCon was a funny balance, because we wanted to bring those external speakers back to an audience that didn't necessarily travel to the big open source events. And we did that. But what we actually found was that because the audience was our customers, they craved more in the way of our content. So for SimCron, we're trying to get that that balance. That balance,
and I fully support that. There's always we got to bring in these external speakers; they'll get value. And I mean, well, one of your customers said, "Oh, that was great, Alan. Just what our CEO said." It's like, okay, well, at least I endorsed what he said to you. But it is, they want to talk about your products, your services, what's working, what's not working, and how to make their life easier. So it is. Just your stuff is really that's the reason they're there. They're paying you money, and they just want to get more value, let you know what's working right, and have a few drinks together.
And the social side we'll miss, because that was a big part of it. And it was quite a good occasion, as you'll remember. But as soon as it's safe to do so, we want to carry on. But we may well continue with the the video based.
I agree. I think
format.
It has a lot of value there, because you're not trying to get people online at this particular point in time. What you're doing is you're creating interesting content, putting it out there, making people aware, and when they have time, which that's how we run the TED Summits as well. I'm just fingers crossed that for TED Summit EMEA Americas 2021, which we're going to hold in November, that we'll be it'll be hybrid, because for a whole variety of reasons, but I'm hoping it'll be enough, we'll be core to actually have a physical event in Portugal in November when the temperature is sunny and in the 20s. Well, all the rest of us, it's rainy, overcast, and a bit miserable.
That social networking, all in one place together piece, I think is often forgotten with conferences, but that's really valuable. I think doing it hybrid or virtual, the challenge is actually surfacing the content to people. I know myself, I haven't seen nearly as much content this year as I would if I'd been physically in one place and it was happening and that was what we were doing.
Because you're in the office, you've got all the shit to deal with work. You don't have time to be saying, oh, what's going on with this particular event? There's other stuff that basically is taking priority. But again, thanks so much for your time, Simon. Really enjoyed this interview, and take care.
Likewise.